Happy Murica Day to all of my fellow Muricans who are watching this video. Today there was only one new anime that came out, which was Uchi Musume, or If It's For My Daughter, I'd Even Defeat a Demon Lord. This is one of them native isekais, as they've started calling them, which is to say a fantasy show that is so steeped in the aesthetic and tropes of isekai that it feels like an isekai without being one. Which is fine. I mean, those are less annoying than isekai, since it is basically just a fantasy show. It's about a guy who finds this little girl in the woods. She is a devil creature who, in other words, she's got little horns, and her father has just died. So he picks her up and takes her home with him and basically starts raising her as his own. That's really all that happens in this first episode. It's very slowly paced. It sort of drinks in the details along the way, but the artwork's not really so detailed as to make you feel like this world is particularly alive. I mean, it looks like a pretty generic isekai world. The character designs are also pretty generic. There's nothing about the characterization that's particularly noteworthy. The little girl is just a little girl. She's about as pure and innocent as you could possibly imagine. The main guy is just nice guy adventurer dude who lives in the city. If there's anything more to this plot than just nice guy raises innocent baby, then it is not apparent yet. Now, let's get into a really in-depth conversation about the subtext in this show, because I know that a lot of people are going to be put off and probably creeped out by this show. I mean, some of you might view it as just simply a cute show about a father raising a daughter. And I think you could appreciate it that way. I mean, the show doesn't go out of its way to, sexualize the little girl or their relationship. I don't think it's really trying to go for that angle. I think it wants to be more cutesy and a little bit more wholesome, but at the same time it very much is a romanticization of this idea of raising a little girl who is basically bound to grow up to love this guy. And it's you could almost view it as a grooming anime to some extent. I would definitely say that the fact that she's not actually his daughter, that it's just some girl he found in the woods and is raising, is just a vehicle by which to say, it's not, it won't even be weird when they hook up later, because she's just a little girl he found. He's only 18. It's not that huge of an age difference. So, when the time comes, this will seem completely logical. And I know there are some people who that mere implication would creep them out. It does not do so for me. And I'm going to get into why. Because I don't think that anime or art in general should be taken literally. And I feel that way because I don't think that we as human beings think or operate in literal terms. I don't think that our minds work in a literal way. If you want a perfect example of what I mean, just think about dreams. How your dreams are never a literal representation of something. They are just your brain trying to basically take all of the information that's inside of it and just run through it and do something with it. And so all these wires get crossed. I mean, at least in my dreams, people don't have the personalities that they have in real life. They don't have the same relationships. They're not living in the same places. It's a jumbled mess of impressions of, people I know, personalities I've encountered, places I've been, but all combined in these odd ways, because it's just basically running a data organization on my mind. And this is why in your dreams things happen that that don't really reflect any kind of feelings you have. Like if you let's say have sex with one of your siblings in a dream or something, it doesn't mean you want to have sex with one of your siblings. It means that your sibling is somebody who has left a strong impression on you, and also sex is something that has left a strong impression on you in your mind. And those two things just got combined in the random errant smattering of signals that's going on in your brain. So even words are a much more literal way of describing our thoughts than the way that they actually occur. We use words because we need to have some kind of solid grounding in order for us to make easier decisions and to communicate with each other. I mean, if we didn't have language, we would be able to completely function and live and think and, like, you know, operate. I mean, obviously animals do this. They don't use words in their own minds. They don't have language. They're not describing things literally. They're understanding them through pattern recognition, through, you know, just a general sense of the world. I don't even know if there's a word for exactly what it is to think without language, but you know, you have an understanding that you're operating from, regardless of whether it's something you can describe. And words are just a way by which we attempt to ascribe meaning to things, but they're very limited. They can't necessarily go all the way on, you know, untangling the web of impressions we have in our brains. And that is why art is interesting. That is what it basically exists for, is to represent these things that cannot be put into simple words. It's like, I can't describe the feeling that I'm having to you, so I'm going to try to put it into a set of words that are more abstracted so that you will not think of it literally, so that you won't, you know, take it in terms of the words that I have found, but extrapolate from those words some kind of other feeling that you don't necessarily have to be able to explain back or even, you know, understand in any kind of language, but you look at it and you have that, like, wakaru, you know, like that, yes, I get it. I feel a kinship. I feel a level of understanding with the fact that we as humans have come to we have similar impressions in our minds, and we're communicating between those impressions using the medium of, you know, the words and images that we can understand, but, you know, abstracted so that they are not taken literally. That is how I view things like Loli. It is not literal. It is not literally about being attracted to little girls, because there is so much more that is communicated in the imagery of a little girl that reaches deep into our psyches. And when I think about Evangelion, for instance, I'm going to go into a little Eva tangent here. Like in the final episodes of Eva, you have this presentation of the concept of, you know, I exist in my own mind as one person, in your mind as another person, in another person's mind as another person. Each of us has our own conception of who that person is, but each of those is equally real in the minds of those people. Like, none of them is literal, but they all have a meaning to the person who's interpreting them. And I think that a big part of Eva, when it comes to Shinji Ikari falling in love with Kaoru, like, I don't think that Shinji is literally gay or even possibly bisexual. I mean, he might be, but I think that there's a certain way that when you're trying to intake all this information and all these sort of wires are getting crossed in your mind, you will latch on to something that, again, is not literal. So, for instance, like, Shinji is very sexually confused. He's attracted to all these different women in his life, but he doesn't know what to do with that. He doesn't really understand why he's attracted. He just has this libido that's operating all the time. And it's not even a matter of, like, whether he particularly likes one girl or the other. It's just like this sexual urge that's driving him. But he also is, separately from that, extremely lonely and, like, lacking in companionship and needing somebody to understand him and to try and communicate with him on a deeper level. And so these two separate feelings keep getting conflated with each other, and he can't work through and parse the difference between them, which is why he, like, struggles with his relationships with the women in his life, where, like, you know, some of them he wants companionship out of them, not necessarily sex, but because the sex drive is also there, it's fucking with his perception of the companionship, or vice versa. And so I think that when it comes to Kaoru, in the, you know, the wake of all this confusion, he sees somebody who's offering him that acceptance that he's been longing for, and so the sexuality gets projected into it because it's also there. It's also, you know, driving him in the background. And, like, those things become this mesh. And like, this was something I experienced a lot of in my teen years, where like I was so lonely and so, desperate and needing those kinds of connections that like it completely threw my sexuality into question, even my gender into question, my, identity, because I had all these different urges and different desires that would get mixed and conflated. And it was like, oh, if only there was one person who could arrive and resolve all of these things, somebody who I could relate to and be sexual with, and that would be the answer. But what kind of form does that take? How do I even understand what I'm looking for from that? And it was just like a maelstrom. And like I've gotten to a point now where I've kind of sorted that out and I understand it better. So, that's the way that these kind of signals can go all over the place. And then we also have to think about what like symbolism in itself is, which is basically about drawing parallels between different iconography that exists inside of our brains. So for instance, like the moon, it's a powerful symbol because it can represent so many different things. It's something that could represent darkness, or it could represent light shining through darkness, or it could represent the passage of time. Even like it could represent literally a billion things. I'm not going to go all fucking day about the moon, but like that is a symbol that it's not literally just the moon. It means a lot of different things to different people, and anything that's broad like that, such as male or female, has way more implications than just the literal male or female. So for me, when I think about Loli, I tend to think of it as something that I relate to as a part of my own mind, not as like a projection of another person, but as a part of myself. Because there is this inner part of my mind that is this sort of like the artistic part, what I would describe as the left brain, the part that is more creative, that is more effeminate, that is more sort of tortured by society, because it's a part that's less understood, it's a part that's been damaged more, it's a part that is in itself more emotional, and it's a part that I did not learn to express in an easy way. It's a lot easier for me to talk about literal, analytical things. It's a lot easier for me to talk about things that are better used with words. That's why I work in a medium that is about explaining art as opposed to creating more difficult art, stuff that isn't so literal. And when I do create that kind of stuff, it doesn't have the same audience or the same appeal, because people are coming to me to explain things, not to abstract things, so to speak. So I think of the Loli as like this abstract conceptualization of this part of my mind that feels like that is more easily understood in terms of being a young, damaged girl, as opposed to, what I literally look like as a human being. Like, if you envision me, if you look at me, I do not symbolically look like what that part of my brain feels like. And so I can project that feeling that's in that part of my brain onto a character. However, because of the fact that, in recognition of this and over the years, like, I've evolved, and like my understanding of myself has evolved, my feelings have evolved, the way I perceive myself has evolved. So like, back when I was like 16, when I was the Loli guy, especially, on the internet, like, I was extremely damaged. I was extremely, taken aback. I was like in the back. I was very much locked in the back of my mind, unable to connect with other people. And I saw myself as, a fragile creature. And a show like this would have resonated with me a lot at that time, where it's basically just about a male figure who is very... He just has things figured out. He's just an adult. He's a very regular person. He's very capable of taking care of someone, basically swooping in and taking this fragile, damaged child and saying, like, I'm going to, make it so you can live. I'm going to take care of you. And I think that fantasy appeals to a lot of the same emotions as isekai does. especially the way that I think, modern Japan is and why isekai is so powerful. Like, for a lot of people, they feel powerless in their everyday lives because they're just doing average shit. They're just basically, being a bean counter, living a totally normal life where there's no real passion, there's no real excitement. They're just doing what they're told and going with the flow, And so isekai gives them the chance to say, like, man, if the skills that I did have that have no real function in the society that I'm a part of and are, I'm just a normal person in this world, but if the skills that I developed in playing video games and consuming media had application, I would be a badass. If the things that I know, were useful in another world, I would be amazing in that world, And I think that this show gets to an even, like, deeper layer of that, which is, like, not only could I be a protector of the whole world and all that kind of stuff, but, like, just even the ability to just protect one life, to feel like I was useful to this one person, like someone who desperately needs somebody to be there for them, and I could be that person. But, like, the wires are also crossed because, again, just like with Shinji Ikari being lonely and desperate and needing connection, but also having this, like, sexual urge that's unfulfilled and all this other stuff going on in his mind, this is why, as an anime fan, you want to have the cute little Loli that represents the incredibly fragile thing that you can lift up and help to improve, but they also have to be sexually available because you need that release as well. You need also for there to be something that is going to, in the case of, like, father-daughter relationship is very similar to brother-sister relationship, as I've talked about in, talking about why incest is so appealing to people, is because it's somebody who you grew up with, who knows everything about you, who has always been there for you, and so you have a deeper connection than you would have with a regular person. And it's not necessarily realistic to, like, what actual brother-sister relationships are like, but that's the fantasy, is that, you can basically have your cake and eat it too. And that's how it is in this show as well. It's like, yeah, a real father-daughter relationship isn't just, I take care of all this little girl's needs and she implicitly loves me completely and, is destined for falling in love with me. Like, that's not realistic, but it symbolically makes sense. It symbolically represents these inner desires that we have to, be this type of person who could, support somebody and be rewarded in such a way for it. And so, like, I totally get what the appeal of this show is to people like that. But in a way, I see it as kind of pathetic, like, because of the fact that it's so... Like, you could do this. You could just go be a father and not even require this kind of carrot on the stick of the little girl is going to fall in love with me one day. I mean, there's no challenge in raising a little girl who's just a perfect little angel. There's nothing... It's so... Again, it's a wish fulfillment fantasy in that everything is just cute and fun and perfect and there's no difficulty. And, like, I feel like you have to be in a pretty, like, pathetic state of mind to really gravitate towards this kind of story, to feel like you have so little that you can accomplish in your life that you need it to be as easy as possible so that it's pure gratification, I mean, maybe I'm being overly harsh. I mean, it's not like you have to take your media that seriously. Maybe this is just a drop in the bucket of all the shows you watch. You just want something cute and fun you can throw on, whatever. It's just like, it doesn't do anything special for me. And the way that I've evolved, I don't view that inner child in my mind as this kind of, extremely pathetic figure, as, like, this tiny fragile girl who's just a cute, innocent angel who, needs to be protected. Like, this is why I'm so much more interested in the idea of the paleo loli, as I call them, of, like, yeah, it looks like a little girl, but it's actually a 600-year-old super intelligent vampire. Because, like, I have a reverence for that part of myself, that part, the creative part, the part that I don't understand, because I feel like that's the part that has always been driving me forward. That's the part that, in its struggle to be understood, has compelled me to, be able to analyze, to be able to represent myself better. And so, like, to me, it's like, this part of my brain is beyond me. It's not that it's a weaker part, and like it might physically look weaker. It might look like just a little girl who needs to be protected because it's more emotional, it's more fragile, it's smaller, it's in the back, it's not at the vanguard, and it doesn't look like me, but it knows things I don't know. And the more I know, the more the sense that there is another part of me that knows things I don't know is even more powerful and compelling to me. This idea that, yeah, that little girl is actually God, that little girl knows way more than I do, which is why I've also always been into like the God Dare type of characters, like a Haruhi or I'm trying to think of another good God Dare. You know what I mean? So, like, that's the way I think of this stuff. That's the metaphorical level on which I view anime. I always think back to the quote from the guy who said, like, the reason I draw Loli is, like, I view myself as the Loli, and the rapist is society, And, like, I don't really see it exactly that way, but that I get where he's coming from with that. Like, the point is that it's not literal. It's not, I think little girls are attractive and therefore I like Loli. This symbolizes something. It symbolizes something that I have a much more abstract understanding of, and it also is playing off of the web of confusion that that is going through your mind, the web of different things that are being connected to each other that aren't necessarily related in reality, but through art we can come to understand it better. And unfortunately, I think that because so many people don't have like the lexicon to be able to talk about art this way. Not enough people think about art beyond the terms of if it's good or bad, or in any kind of interesting depth of like why it fucking exists in the first place. Not enough people are analyzing art and like getting down to the purpose of it, because like if you don't think about it this way, art is fucking pointless. Like, there's no reason to have it. Like, the entertainment value, but people say like, oh, it's just meant to be entertaining. Why is it entertaining? It's entertaining because it's giving you something you can't get without it, But like, aside from that, people are so unwilling to talk about these subjects, to even approach this genre, because they want to think of it in those literal terms, even though it's not how we think about art. It's just such a touchy subject that people won't even put any thought into it. I'm getting off on a tangent now. So that's my thoughts on Uchi Musume. This turned into a 22-minute philosophical rant, but that's what I expected. I also wanted to answer some comments from the previous video. First of all, talking about that other goddamn show, Mao-sama Reset. I figured this out before I posted the video, but the girl, the Rem clone girl, looks way better in the manga. Like, They fucked up real bad. They turned her into a Rem clone. She was not like that. I mean, I understand they probably just took this property that was like, mildly popular. I mean, it was popular enough to have a manga adaptation, and they just went, you know what, like, this will not survive on its own, but maybe if we turn this character into a Rem clone, people will care about it. I think it probably had the opposite effect of what they were going for, but, we'll see. Was there something else? Oh yeah, the music that I've been using in these videos. I don't know if this one's going to have music since it's more of a longer, serious discussion, but I've been just using the same few songs, so it's really difficult to like continually find new background music. But one of them has been the song Intermission from Manabi Strait, the like clapping song. The more sci-fi sounding stuff has been from the Phantasy Star Online soundtrack, mostly the song Chaotic Bar, which plays in the shop in the game, which shout out to everybody who recognizes that song. I'm surprised there were so many people commenting that they knew it. PSO is my favorite game, pretty much, of all time. And then I also have been using some Tonkatsu DJ Agetaro music here and there. Mostly just, and that fucking song, the one that somebody called a Camp Lazlo song. I know it from 12 Ounce Mouse, but it's just a freeware song. Like, it's just a royalty-free track that's appeared in tons of stuff. So, yeah, that's all the music I've used. That's it for this episode. If you enjoy this kind of depth of discussion about anime, of course you should stick around on my channel. You should definitely be a patron. If you even pledge $1, you'll have fucking days of bonus content that's exclusive to patrons, deleted stuff that was removed from the internet in one fashion or another. And, there's a bunch of different tiers. I'm going to be selling shirts soon. Some people requested that I make this shirt for sale. It's currently backwards, so if you want to see the corrected version, go on my Twitter, because I accidentally printed this one backwards, but it's my America Day celebration shirt. So I'll probably sell it if anybody wants to buy it once I launch my shirts, which should happen tomorrow, I hope. That's it for this one. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.